us know the famous teaching of Chazal that God actually offered the Torah to all the nations of the world. And they turned it down because they asked Hashem what's in it, and when Hashem gave them an answer that didn't fit their liking, so they said, sorry, I can't do it. Again, this matter is actually enormously, philosophically and historically complicated, because what would have been if they would have said yes? But Lamaisa, the Torah is the story of the Jewish people, so exactly what form would the Torah have taken? Now, is Esav going to willingly accept that whole story about Yaakov taking the brachas? Exactly what it would have meant is quite complicated. But the one thing Chazal say is that the great thing that the Jewish people did was that they didn't even ask. They said the statement, whatever Hashem says, na'aseh v'nishma. We will do, and then we will hear. Meaning we're giving God a blank check. As opposed to the nations that say, tell me what you're offering. We said to Hashem, we'll take it even before we know. Ravaji Yosef actually says that every single day when a man puts on tefillin, this is why you put on the hand tefillin before you put on the head tefillin. Right? That's the halacha. Because the hand represents the commitment to action. The head represents the ability to understand, cognition. And just as Matan Torah was a commitment to action, even in the absence of a cognitive understanding of what that entailed, so every morning putting on the tefillin is a mini Matan Torah of Naaseh v'nishma. Right? That's actually a very, very good explanation of why you put on the yad before you put on the rosh. But what's interesting is this, perhaps you noticed it, that the famous immortal pasuk, which Chazal use as a source of praise for the Jewish people, Kol asher diber Hashem na'aseh v'nishma, actually appears in this week's Torah reading. But in last week's Torah reading, before God offers the Ten Commandments, they don't say na'aseh v'nishma. They say Kol asher diber Hashem na'aseh. And you're almost waiting. Where's that nishma here? Is my chumash missing a word? Whatever it be. Or the Balkari skipped nishma, right? Somebody might even call out nishma. Right? And yet, it's 100% true that in Parshas Yisro it does not say na'aseh v'nishma. It only says na'aseh. So what's the explanation? So the Meshech Chochmah says the following idea, that these two psukim do represent two different periods in Jewish existence. And that is the following. All of us know that the Torah has 613 mitzvot, and we know that 248 are positive commandments, thou shalt do, and 365 are the negative commandments, thou shalt not do. Now, Chazal correlate them to parts of the body. There are 248 bones, and every positive commandment gives spiritual life and vibrancy to one of those bones. And there are 365 sinews or ligaments in the body. And every negative commandment will impair the health of that ligament. Now, what that actually means is hard to know, because I don't think it means if you keep the mitzvot, you won't have arthritis or some type of, but in some spiritual way, it gives spiritual life. So now, if that's the case, we actually have a very significant problem. There has never been a righteous person, man or woman, in Jewish history that is able to keep all 613 commandments. It's impossible. Some are only for Kohanim, some are for men and not for women, some are for women and not for men. Many only apply when there's a Beis HaMikdash. Many only apply in Eretz Yisrael. But here's the problem. The problem basically is, if God created a system where all 613 are necessary for my spiritual life, then by definition, every person is a spiritual cripple. Now, it's one thing, if I'm a cripple because I made bad choices not to do mitzvahs, that's fine. That's not God's responsibility. But God cannot set up a system where it's impossible for me to get the spiritual aura of 613 commandments. That's a very unjust system. God says, I'm making a system that requires 613 for you to be whole. And within that system, it's impossible for you to ever do that. Doesn't seem right. So the Svarim HaKadoshim say that we have two answers to this dilemma. Answer number one is Torah learning. And this is part of the reason why Torah learning is so important. Because even a mitzvah that I'm not able to actually do, the spiritual light of that mitzvah can penetrate my soul by learning about it. For example, Chazal say, he who learns the laws of korbanos is as if they brought korbanos. Same thing is true for the laws of leprosy, the laws of get, right? No one's going to say, for example, get is actually a good example. Giving a get is a positive commandment, if you want to get divorced. So what's going to be? One of my bones, if I don't give a get, one of my bones is going to be impaired. Am I supposed to go around giving gittin to my wife because otherwise I got that bone not working very well? Obviously, the answer is no. And you achieve the light of the mitzvah by learning about the laws of get or whatever it would be. That is why the Chafetz Chaim writes. The Chafetz Chaim reinstituted the modern learning of the Gemaras about korbanos, which had been neglected for really hundreds of years. And somebody would criticize the Chafetz Chaim, like, why are you telling people to learn things that are not relevant halachically? As if the Chafetz Chaim didn't care about halachic relevance. I mean, he wrote the Mishnah Berurah, but why are you telling people to learn? So the Chafetz Chaim gave two answers. One answer is, if you believe in Mashiach, then this is highly relevant, because we do believe the korbanos are going to come back. Okay, again, that's another debate. But the second thing the Chafetz Chaim said was that precisely when you're not able to do a mitzvah, there's a special importance in learning about it, because that is how your soul gets the spiritual light. So that is answer number one to the Taryag quandary, the path of Talmud Torah. But there's an answer number two to the Taryag quandary. How can I do 613? And that is Avas Yisrael. How is that so? Let's imagine tefillin again, to go back to tefillin. A man puts on tefillin on his left arm, if he's a righty. Now, how would he describe what he did? Would he say, my arm did a mitzvah today? My hand did a mitzvah today? No. The arm is connected to the person. So what my arm does is what I do. So too, if you connect to the Jewish people with bonds of love, togetherness, and unity, you become like a limb on top of this transcendental organism that has a past, present, future, or even a cell. And as a result, when I connect to Am Yisrael, which is past, present, and future, the mitzvahs of the men become the mitzvahs of the women, the mitzvahs of the women become the mitzvahs of the men, the mitzvah of the Kohen becomes the mitzvah of the Levi, or the non-Kohen. When I separate myself, then I'm only doing my mitzvahs, I'm going to be defective. So Avas Yisrael is a way of connecting yourself to an entity that is larger than yourself. And therefore, even if you as an individual cannot do these mitzvahs, you get the spiritual light via your chibur, your connection to everybody else. So the Meshech Chochmah says these two derachim are merumas in the two psukim. In Parshat Yisro, look how he's medayik. It says the following: Vayanu kol ha'am yachdav. Everybody answered yachdav, together. Kol asher diber Hashem, whatever Hashem says, na'aseh. That's referring to a time which was the time of Matan Torah itself, when there was unity and togetherness and Avas Yisrael, ish echad uvalev echad. When there is unity, we can declare to God, everything you commanded us, we can do. I can't do it all. You can't do it all. He can't do it all. She can't do it all. But together, we do it all. Vayanu kolam yachtav kol asher diber Hashem nasa. In Parshat Mishpatim, the word yachtav is omitted. Vayanu kolam. That's a remez that there's going to come a time in Am Yisrael where there will not be a yachtav. There'll be sinas chinam, there'll be polarization, there'll be division, there'll be dissension. Under those circumstances, we can no longer say, everything God said we can do. If I'm not connected to Klal Yisrael, I can't do all of these mitzvahs. So we have to go to plan B. Even though I can't do them, but I can get the light by learning about them. And that's what it means. Naseh, we will do, v'nishma, through the process of learning and trying to understand. And therefore the two psukim, right, so you'll notice the diuk here. In Yisro, vayanu kol ha'am yachdav, we can say naseh. Without a yachdav, it has to be naseh v'nishma. So it seems that these are two different derachim, the derech of Avas Yisrael and the derech of Talmud Torah. But in reality, these are two roads that ultimately converge and become one. Because Chazal tell us, we say this in Eretz Yisrael, we say it every day in davening, in Chutz La'aretz, most people, Ashkenazim, say it only on Shabbos. The statement, Talmidei Chachamim, Marbim Shalom Ba'olam, that those people who truly learn Torah, they increase peace in the world. Of course, there's an old rabbi's joke. Why do Talmidei Chachamim increase peace in the world? Because he says, you got two people who are fighting all the time, and they can't agree on anything. But when it comes to criticizing their Rav, they'll make shalom, and they'll mutually, Okay, so Talmidei Chacham brings peace. No, but the simple meaning is, once again, now, this raises, personally painful issues here, because unfortunately we see in Eretz Yisrael sometimes the case that even among the great Talmidei Chachamim, there are sometimes outbreaks of machlokas that are very, very hard to understand. But I'm just quoting, I'm not editorializing. Our Chachamim have told us that the sincere learning of Torah is supposed to bring peace into the world. It is supposed to create unity. It is supposed to create togetherness. It is supposed to create love and interconnection among Jews. And therefore, even though initially we have two derachim, when there's achdus, we fulfill the Torah by deed. And when there's not achdus, we fulfill the Torah by learning. But the learning itself gives rise to achdus and unity. And therefore, derech number 2 turns into derech number 1 as well. Okay, and that's the Meshech Chachma's diuk for the two verses. This is why generally, in Jewish outreach, there are two different approaches. There are many people who feel, and again, there's a good argument on each approach, that if I want to help somebody become a better Jew, and so I want to learn Torah with them, but I can't learn Torah with them until I absolutely convince them that the Torah comes from God, etc., and therefore we have to spend a lot of time on the divinity of the Torah and going through the proofs and the counterproofs and the arguments, because if they don't believe that the Torah comes from God, then how is it going to affect them in any positive way? But there are those who take an opposite position, actually. There are those who say, let the theology come a little later. Let us go directly to the teaching of the Torah. So I could have an attitude that would say, for example, okay, I believe the Torah is from God, you don't, but let's just see the wisdom and the message that it might be giving us. And then there is a concept, it's based on the Talmud Yerushalmi, that God actually says, even if they leave me, let them learn my Torah, because the light of my Torah will bring them back to me. So there is a concept that learning Torah is, in fact, a very good way, in a practical sense, of breaking down barriers among Jews. Because even if we disagree as to the ultimate theological predicate of the Torah, we can agree that it has been a source of wisdom for the Jewish people. Let's learn what it has to say, and let's bring our insights to it. And that can break down many, many barriers. That's why we have the phenomenon. In fact, in Eretz Yisrael, you have some very interesting configurations that are even a little bit bizarre. But you have the concept of the secular Beit Midrash. Have you heard about those things? Or like Ruth Calderon and people like that. In other words, people who are not religious, but they want to look into the Torah, into the Talmud, and see what message it might have. Now, some people might say, hey, how can you do that? You have no right to appropriate the Torah unless you go along with the whole agenda. But there's another way of looking at it, and that is, at least they're looking at the Torah, at least they're mining the Torah, at least they're trying to get the values out of the Torah, and that ultimately can be conducive to bringing Klal Yisrael together in many, many ways. I mean, it is a very delightful. Now they say Hashem has a great sense of humor. It is kind of a funny, cute thing that almost the first speaker who ever quoted like Gemaras on the Knesset floor was Ruth Calderon. I mean, there was 50 or 60 years of Haredi parties, but they would never bring in any teaching of the Torah on the Knesset floor because they figured nobody would be interested. And here you have a secular woman who actually is willing to talk about, learn a piece of Gemara in her speech on the Knesset.